Welcome. Today we're talking with Elissa Brewer, Senior Risk Management Consultant at Abrigo, specializing in anti-money laundering, AML, and countering the financing of terrorism, CFT. Elissa, welcome, and thank you for joining us at today's Banker Digest.
Thank you for having me, Larry. I'm excited to be here today.
Great. All right. Well, let's get started. Elissa, we've had anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism rules for several years now. What's new in AML and CFT compliance?
Well, there are a lot of things that aren't necessarily new, but new twists and turns on things that we've already seen. There is quite a bit of regulatory chatter and kind of this expectation to see what happens in examinations and conversations, especially with recent bank failures. That kind of sets everybody on edge. So I think there's going to be a lot going on in that space. That we also still have the 8 priorities from FinCEN, and institutions are really trying to figure out how that truly impacts them and how to incorporate that into things like their risk assessments and their overall compliance plans.
Great. Thank you, Elissa. So pivoting a little bit, Abrigo has a webinar on June 22nd this year on elder fraud. Why the interest in elder fraud?
Well, Larry, unfortunately, elder fraud is not going anywhere. It's not getting any smaller. There's a huge segment of our population that is elderly or rapidly becoming more into that category. I think, everybody has somebody that they know that could be very easily impacted by elder fraud, whether that's physical fraud or financial exploitation. It can take on a lot of different facets and have a lot of impact in our communities.
Elissa, thank you. So what are some of the topics you'll be discussing at the upcoming webinar on elder fraud?
This webinar is going to actually be a deep dive into some recent topics. We're going to be talking about the trends. One really interesting trend that I find has been that while cases have dropped in the last couple of years, we're seeing a significant spike in the dollar amount involved. So we're going to look at those trends. We're also going to provide a lot of mitigation techniques. So those in our audience will be able to take these things back and improve their own programs at their own institutions.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. So Elissa, thank you for spending time with today's Banker Digest to update us on AML and CFT compliance, as well as highlight the need to better understand the scope and impact of elder fraud. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry. It's been my pleasure.
Good. All right. So thank you. In closing, thank you for joining today's Banker Digest. If you have additional questions for Elissa or would like to learn more about the Elder Care webinar, please see the links in her bio.